Pakistan's capital is sealed off. Security forces have been deployed to stop Imran Khan's supporters from marching into Islamabad. They're demanding the former Prime Minister be released from jail and the government resign. Could this lead to more political instability? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Bernard Smith. Tens of thousands of people have reached the outskirts of Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, in what is looking like the biggest protest march since February's disputed election. That vote brought the Pakistan Muslim League and Pakistan People's Party to power. But Imran Khan supporters say the vote was stolen from their party, the PTI, and that the judiciary has been manipulated to keep their leader out of politics. Khan has been in jail since May, convicted of corruption. He says the government and the establishment, a euphemism for the powerful security forces, want him to remain behind bars. PTI supporters are demanding Khan be released and the government resign. So what might happen next? Can Pakistan's government survive? Could Khan be freed? We'll look at the issues in a moment, but first this report from Fintan Monaghan.
Islamabad is a city under lockdown. Roads are closed, internet is restricted, and police are out in force. They've promised to respond swiftly to any demonstrations by supporters of jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan.
The entire central district is being monitored by Islamabad police. If any protesters come, they'll be arrested immediately.
Hundreds of Khan supporters have already been arrested, but they remain undeterred. They want their leader out of jail and the current government out of office. Tens of thousands have come from across the country, and they want their voices to be heard.
God willing, we will stay on the streets and continue the struggle for our rights until the return of our rights of the people of Pakistan.
In 2022, Imran Khan was removed as Prime Minister in a no-confidence vote. Since then, he's been charged and jailed over dozens of criminal cases, many of which have resulted in acquittal. Khan supporters say his rivals are weaponizing the justice system to keep him out of power. His Tehreek-e-Insaf party, the PTI, was banned from contesting the elections, so his loyalists ran as independents. Combined, they won the most seats. No party won a majority, however, resulting in a coalition government and more protests. On the streets of Islamabad, many long for stability and a return to normality.
These regular protests are not only destroying our economy, but are making our country's situation unstable, which is not a favour to our country at all. We want Pakistan's top political leaders to sit down and find solutions to these problems.
The situation is very serious. This should not happen. It is impacting our country's economic situation. There should be political stability in the country. The only option is that these parties should go for elections. There is a conflict between the government and the opposition which is having a negative impact on our country, and it should be resolved.
But for now, Pakistan's political giants appear to be deadlocked. Imran Khan's supporters are determined to get him out of jail and back in power. His opponents in the governing coalition want him out of office and out of politics permanently. Fintan Monaghan, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
The protests come as Pakistan faces many challenges. Kamal Haider reports from Islamabad on some of them.
Thousands of protesters of Imran Khan, the former Prime Minister, who's in jail, are marching on Islamabad and getting ever closer. Now, to stop them, the authorities have requisitioned the services of the militia that you see behind me marching towards me, backed up by the Rangers, who are also going to be using riot gear and shotguns to stop those protesters from coming into Islamabad. They're also backed by tens of thousands of policemen who've been brought in from other provinces to beef up Pakistan's D Square, a famous protest venue. The situation could not have come at a worse time, as the country has seen a cycle of violence in the Parachinar district along the Afghan border, where sectarian groups have been fighting each other and a mounting death toll. Also the fact that the country's economy is suffering. The Pakistani government is on a bailout from the IMF, and daily losses are now said to be in hundreds of millions of dollars because the transport system, telecommunication, mobile services, internet services have been blocked. And so have many of the highways leading to Islamabad, which of course is leading to a loss in revenue for transporters. Schools are closed and the country is under virtual siege. Now the important thing will be how the government settles this particular problem. People at large are saying that there should be a political solution to a political problem, and that the use of force may exacerbate an already complicated situation. This is Kamal Haider in Islamabad for Inside Story.
And let's bring in our guests. Joining us from Islamabad is Azeema Cheema, a political economy specialist and founding director of the Pakistani think tank Verso Consulting. In Washington, D.C. is Hassan Akbar, the Pakistan Fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center. He previously worked in both the Pakistani government and the private sector, focusing on national security and strategic policy. And in San Francisco is Fahd Humayun, a visiting scholar at the Center for International Security and Cooperation at Stanford University. Welcome to all of you. I'll begin with you, Fahd, if I may. Do you sense the beginning of the end game in Pakistan for this coalition government?
It's difficult to say at this point in time. Pakistan is unfortunately no stranger to crisis, and the political turmoil that we're seeing at the moment is the extension of a crisis that began in 2022 when Prime Minister Imran Khan was removed from power through a vote of no confidence, since has been incarcerated with a number of criminal charges against him, most of which he says are politically motivated. But essentially what we're seeing is a face-off between a popular politician, arguably the most popular politician and consequential politician in Pakistan right now, and a military establishment that is intent on trying to ensure some degree of both political and economic stability, which has eluded Pakistan for several years. The problem at the moment seems to be that both Imran Khan and the military establishment have very hardened positions, and it doesn't seem as if either side is willing to sort of compromise or soften its positions to a point where a solution could be reached. In this current crisis, Imran Khan has called on his supporters to march on Islamabad. Report suggests that the sort of mass mobilization that Imran Khan had intended perhaps hasn't materialized. But it's also important to consider the obstacles that Imran Khan's supporters faced, both in terms of arrests and detentions, and the crackdown on PTI activists, PTI being the party that Imran Khan represents.
OK, well, Hassan, we are hearing that there are tens of thousands of people on the outskirts of Islamabad. Is that enough to dislodge this government, to force somebody's hand?
I mean, as Fahd said, I think it's early to say what the outcome will be. I think it will depend largely on how sustainable this protest is going to be. We should remember that only a month or so ago, Imran Khan protesters led by the Chief Minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Ali Amin Gandapur, also came to Islamabad with almost the same demands for release of Imran Khan. But they were unsustainable. As soon as they reached Islamabad, they had to leave the capital. The police cracked down on them in a major way. So we still have to see how this is going to pan out. They are right now at the outskirts of the capital. And there is a heavy deployment of police, both from Islamabad police, rangers, and police from outside, from other provinces, which have been called into Islamabad. So we have to see. The arrangements are unprecedented. I must say that the administration in Islamabad and the federal government has made unprecedented arrangements this time. We've not seen such a large-scale lockdown. There have been containers on all major highways have been blocked. The internet has been slowed down. And so we still have to see how this is going to pan out. I think the outcome will depend largely on whether the protesters will be able to reach Islamabad and then sustain for a day or two. I think that will force the hand of the government to negotiate.
Azeema, our two other guests are hedging their bets, but the military's had to essentially lock themselves in the capital, haven't they? Do you sense any tension there in Islamabad?
I mean, there's tension all over the country, really. Fahd and Hassan raised extremely pertinent points. I think it's really important to remember that not only have PTI, led by Imran Khan, marched on Islamabad before, but the first march was 10 years ago. Now, they were able to sustain that march for a really long time. It was months and months. And perhaps we take that precedent and expect that they will not be able to effect those kind of results unless they can achieve that kind of a protracted, sustained protest in the city. What I think we shouldn't underestimate is that Mr. Khan has been able to successfully mobilize protesters, his party workers and his party supporters at least, again and again, in cycles. And that has led to this, sort of protracted conflict punctuated by these cycles of protest. And that Mr. Khan has been able to do this with little to no cost to his popularity. On the other hand, I think Kamal Haider's report aptly uses the word siege. The state has, in fact, besieged itself in Islamabad. Hassan's right. The container presence, the restrictions on mobility, the restrictions on connectivity are happening at an unprecedented scale. And the difference is that we are perhaps as of this morning realizing that we may be looking at a week or so of this. Now, a week or so of this kind of a shutdown in Islamabad, at least, means that, it means critical costs to the business, to the business of government, to the business of the private sector, to children going to school. And these are being borne largely by a population that's suffering huge losses under Pakistan's economic crisis anyway. So there are costs to public perception as well.
Fahd, there have been these protests before. We have seen this before in Pakistan, but surely now it's getting much more serious. The economy particularly is in a terrible mess. The government wants more money from the IMF. It got that $3 billion short-term loan. It wants another $6 billion now. Is it different this time in terms of the protests and the consequences?
The economic situation isn't great in Pakistan. It's perhaps not as precarious as it was several months ago. The approval of a new IMF funding program and the slight upgrade of the sovereign credit rating of the country has, in some ways, helped the Pakistani economy in terms of its outlook. Having said that, I don't think we're out of the woods yet. And for the political establishment, this kind of political instability is only likely to compound risks to the economy, as well as the impression of insolvency, which the military establishment and the current government has tried very hard to fend off. Imran Khan's strategy right now is essentially that of the guerrilla insurgent. He doesn't necessarily have to show that he's able to rally huge crowds, but he simply needs to show that the establishment and the current government is unpopular and doesn't enjoy the mass support of the country to the point where governance is actually difficult. And I think he's able to do that quite effectively, even though he's behind bars. The fact that he's in jail makes him immensely popular. I think it's important to remember that 2/3 of Pakistan's population are currently under the age of 30. Many of these young people are either unemployed, don't have good economic prospects, and see in Imran Khan, the aspiration or the hope for a political future that sort of takes on board their aspirations.
OK. So, Hassan, there is huge economic pressure on the government, isn't there? One estimate I got was a $500 million hit to the economy at the moment with the roads blocked and the trains not running. It's surely not sustainable.
I agree it's not sustainable, especially given that, over the last 2 years, the economy has had some success in terms of stabilizing, at least on some macroeconomic fundamentals. Economic security and the state of the economy has been a big concern for the establishment, for the ruling elite in Pakistan, and for the international community. And so in that sense, I think continuous losses is something that are going to bear on the government and force the hand of the establishment to move forward and find a political solution to the current crisis. Again, I think the fundamental point here is that, what Imran Khan's continuous mobilizations again and again have demonstrated is that Pakistan's politics in many ways are transforming because of the youth bulge, as Fahd was mentioning, because of the social media. People are accessing alternate sources of information. Majority of young people in Pakistan, they have different aspirations. And I think in the long term, in the medium to long term, there needs to be a reset of politics in Pakistan. We really have to figure out a way of moving forward where we're able to deal with this perennial issue of political instability and frankly dealing with the question of how we can transition from one government to another without entering into these perpetual phases of crisis. So I think the immediate issue right now is whether there will be a political solution. The three demands put forward by Imran Khan and his party, I think those are difficult demands for any government to fulfill, particularly related to the amendment that recently passed, the 26th Amendment, and the question of holding new elections, which would essentially mean that the government would have to go. And so since these are such large demands, there has to be a middle way, finding a path forward which is a win-win path forward for both the government and for Imran Khan. I think political stability is essential because Pakistan is dealing with many challenges. We still haven't talked about terrorism. In the last week alone, over 100 casualties in 2 provinces in Pakistan is frankly a very worrying concern for many of us. So I think that the challenges Pakistan faces, we really have to move forward and find a solution to this political crisis.
We'll come back to the security situation shortly, but Azeema, building on something else Hassan was saying, is there a problem with the legitimacy of Shehbaz Sharif's administration? It's built on shaky foundations because of the contested election back in February. It's very difficult for them, isn't it, to remain legitimate?
I think there is a broader legitimacy crisis. Pakistan's current situation is in a way a continuation of an old Pakistani situation. If you go back to what Fahd said, military dispensations do frequently come in to provide the sort of time frame of stability in economic policy to stabilize the macroeconomic fundamentals whenever Pakistan is in an economic crisis. Those are, again, we have these periods of punctuated military rule that have a direct trade-off with democracy, but they do stabilize the macroeconomic fundamentals for a time being. However, at the moment, not only is Pakistan's economic situation extremely dire, there has been a further loss in how people perceive various state actors. And it's not just Shehbaz Sharif's government. The problem is that we did have an election that the people of Pakistan, in spite of many, many challenges, participated in. And those election results have been, not only perceived as misreported, manipulated, they've cast, a cloud over this administration that this administration has not been able to recover from. And while the macroeconomic fundamentals have stabilized to some degree, and we're seeing an arresting of some of the negative trends, the public have yet to be the beneficiary of any of that. In fact, in this interim period, Mr. Khan has become the beneficiary of larger public discontent because the persecution of his political party has been perceived as unfair because of the The way the election was conducted has been perceived as unfair. And again, there is a lot of grievance around the economy, around taxation, around the unfair distribution of taxation. So there's a large wave of public sympathy that's supporting this. That said, people absolutely do not want to see violence. People absolutely don't want the state to engage in violence. And this, unfortunately, is a trajectory that we seem to be on, and something has to diffuse this.
All right. Fahd, is there a way that Imran Khan could potentially fix or repair his relationship with the military establishment that might then lead to for a way to him to get out of jail?
I think we'll have to sort of wait and see. As I mentioned before, both Imran Khan and the military seem to be hemmed in very much to hardline maximalist positions. One possible solution, I think, would be the preferred solution for the military would be to perhaps release Imran Khan, perhaps have Imran Khan as the leader of the opposition return to parliament, and have the government continue its term. Some sort of political reconciliation might be achieved that way. But again, Imran Khan's demands that the government go, the 26th Amendment that was recently passed, that has significantly curtailed the powers of the superior judiciary, I think will be very difficult for either the military establishment or the sitting government to accept right now.
And Hassan, on that 26th Amendment, has that weakened the independence of Pakistan's judiciary here?
I think there are several questions that it has raised about the judiciary, and we still have to see how it will function. I don't think that it's an ideal situation. There are questions about creating. It's much better than what was originally the draft that was originally presented, and there were negotiations between various political actors, and so the amendment that came in that sense was much better than the one that was originally proposed. We still have to see the outcome of this, but critics, particularly those belonging to Imran Khan's party, say that the reforms in the judiciary are actually targeting his party and Imran Khan, and the ensuring that the cases about election irregularities do not come up in the superior judiciary, and when they do come, that they are put in front of a selected panel. I think those questions remain. We still have to see. We haven't seen any judgments from the new constitutional benches that were created, so we still have to see how this pans out. In any case, I think the larger question here is that given all the changes that are happening in Pakistan and the lack of stability that we're seeing, is the country moving forward? And I think many of us have concerns that we are stuck in a policy paralysis. These continuous protests are costing the economy. They're creating a negative environment internationally. I mean, today when the protest is happening, the president of Belarus is on a state visit to Pakistan. And this is not a good look for a country the size of Pakistan. So for us to be able to move forward and deal with some of our challenges, I think there needs to be some level of political reconciliation and political discussion to move forward.
Fahd, Pakistan, a nuclear power, do its neighbours and allies get nervous when they see this sort of instability? It's your particular area of interest for you.
Any kind of instability, of course, has implications that extend far beyond just domestic politics. Having said that, I think Pakistan is currently locked into a position where the economy is not doing, frankly, too well, and Pakistan's regional relationships are sort of also on auto cruise. Or autopilot, if you will. Both relations with India and neighboring Afghanistan are far from ideal. Pakistan's relationship with China, of course, is very much currently seen through the prism of economic cooperation and the China-Pakistan economic corridor. We've seen in recent weeks attacks on Chinese targets in Pakistan, which is of course a big concern for China relations with China. So this kind of political instability, I think, only deepens concerns about things like foreign investment into Pakistan. Attracting investor confidence is going to be difficult with this kind of paralysis.
Okay, and very quickly, also on that subject with you, Hassan, obviously this instability reflects on you've also got the security challenges, the increase in terrorism that Fahd was just touching on, and China, a key investor in Pakistan, tens of thousands of Chinese workers in Pakistan. All of this is piling up pressure, isn't it, on the government to try and resolve this political situation?
Yes, I think so. I think there is a sense in moving forward in a direction where they're able to find a political solution to a political problem. Because I think the current situation is becoming a little bit unsustainable, especially because the constant political crisis is taking, in some sense, the focus of the government away from many of the challenges, such as the economy that we've talked about in length, but also the terrorism challenge, which is becoming quite serious now. Soldiers of the Pakistan army and civilians both are losing lives and are becoming casualty in the war on terrorism, war against terrorism, which is now taking a new shape and form in Pakistan. So I think that the government needs to focus on these two areas primarily. Attracting investment has been a big motto of the government and of the military establishment through the SIFC, the Special Investment Facilitation Cell. And so in order to focus on these areas of reform, I think we need to find a political solution that is able to resolve the instability that we're currently seeing in Pakistan.
All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you to all of our guests, to Azeema Cheema, to Hassan Akbar, and to Fahd Humayun. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. We are at AJ Inside Story. From me, Bernard Smith, and the whole team here, bye for now.